For some analysis, we're now joined by Professor Micheline Ishay, who's the Director for Human Rights Program at the Josef Korbel School of International Studies from Denver in Colorado. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
All right. Perhaps it's not a surprise that we're having yet another round of elections in Israel. Some people might be surprised, though, that this last coalition lasted as long as it did.
Indeed, we were thinking that less than a year would be just the amount of time that this coalition would last as a result of the large ideological spectrum of the political parties. But yes, that's certainly longer than was expected.
So what?
But there were good things that
So what went wrong?
Well, a number of things that were wrong. First of all, the fact that this coalition was, in fact, had ideological differences as to the way the country should move forward. An inflation that came now that is really straining the political economy of Israel. A variety of issues in which the parties that were forming the government were not seeing eyes to eyes.
Naftali Bennett isn't running this time around. There are reports that his party's splintered now. What effect will that have? Because for the last coalition to happen, they needed everybody on board.
Well, it's true, but now we have different issues that are coming. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu succeeded in strengthening its Likud party during the periods of that coalitions between Lapid and Bennett. We are close to a 50-50, in fact, close to the elections. And it will be very interesting to see if the current government would be able to overcome a potential stalemate and even form a coalition in light of the rise of the Likud party.
So who might be the kingmaker in the end?
The kingmakers, it's an interesting question. So we have a 50-50 on both sides. We have two major contenders that are not kingmakers, but they are certainly party to watch. One is the religious Zionist party that was 7 and doubled to 14 seats as per the last predictions of the polls. That is a very right-wing, extreme right-wing party that will certainly form a coalitions with Benjamin Netanyahu, if you were to form a coalition. That is a strange move to the right, a fast move to the right. It is very unclear. It could be also the Lapid government, but the Lapid government will have to form a coalitions with small parties, some of them that may not pass the threshold, some party on the left, like the Labour Party or Meretz. So the kingmakers are very difficult to figure out. Perhaps there is another party called the National Unity Party that is headed by Benny Gantz and Gideon Sa'ar. Benny Gantz was originally in previous elections part of coalitions with Benjamin Netanyahu. He's now running on his own with another former Likud member, Gideon Sa'ar. They are predicted to have about 11 seats in the next Knesset, making them the fourth party. So are they a kingmaker? Certainly not. Neither of those two parties can form a coalition, but they are going to make the decision as to which of the side, depending on the final number that come on in a few days from now, which side will actually be able to form a coalition.
All right. So Benjamin Netanyahu, I mean, people look at this guy, can't believe that somebody who's charged with corruption has the ability to make these comebacks. When we look at the last election, it's not as if he lost by a huge margin, so that perhaps it wasn't so much work required to try and get back in the game.
Well, there was a split of the right that actually led the possibility of the formation of a coalitions by the Lapid-Bennett government, and so he was weakened. For sure, the trial, as you mentioned, for corruption didn't really hurt him. It did not stop him, for sure, from running from prime minister. maybe the audience does not know, but under Israeli law, if you were to be found guilty, there is no immunity law as there was in the past. And so if he wins, he might attempt to pass a law that immunizes a sitting prime minister, but most likely the outcome is that a trial will drag on indefinitely, so that won't be an issue. So yes, he has regrouped himself despite of the trial for corruption, and his voters think that it's just a political foil from his opponent, and it won't really matter at the end.
Could he actually win?
He could actually win, yes. He boasted of his past achievements, and that led, as you know, bringing peace with the Gulf countries. He promised now to add Saudi Arabia as a partner against the Iranian threat. He credits his role in weakening U.S. support for restoring the Iran deal, which worked in Israeli audience, arguing that only the threat of force will deter Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. He makes a lot of promises in light of the inflations, telling to the Israeli citizen that he and only he can raise the standard, living standard for Israeli in light of the current inflation, which has hit 4.6% in Israel, less than other places, but nonetheless is an issue. So he comes out as still the symbol of national pride, and a person who see himself as the key to safety, and particularly for the Jewish settlement in the West Bank. So can he win? Yes, he could win. But again, as I said, it's a tie. It's a 50-50. He has enough people who don't want him to win. And so in a few days, we will know, in light of that tight election, what's the future for the country and for Netanyahu. But here's something I want to just bring to your attention, that Netanyahu needs a clear win, but Lapid party needs either a clear win or a tie, because in Israel, the interim government, the sitting government is also the interim government. And if there is a stalemate, it would be still the Lapid government that oversee the next election or next election.
All right. Okay. So I get a sense, though, that with his party being so dominant, Netanyahu, he'll probably have the most seats in the Knesset. Does that mean that his coalition likely has more similar thinking, more similar visions, ideologies than the current grouping, which might make it easier for him to get policies pushed through?
Well, if he has a governmental coalitions with the religious Zionist party and extreme right, really a Kahanist party, that might actually make his policy easier. But it is not an ideologue. He's a tactician who wants to survive, and that religious party is not really a party that he cares much about. But he knows that if he connect with it and if he forms a coalition, he will have to provide ministerial positions to that party, which is disconcerting for people who are interested in the future of democracy. So he is playing with the right wing, the extreme right wing. He is a right wing man, but really with the extreme right wing. So I'm not sure whether that is to his advantage, perhaps on the short term, certainly on the international scene, and with respect to the way he's seen in the United States, that would not he would not be greeted warmly in the United States political circles. I mean, the current political circles.
All right, we've been talking about the politicians, but in the end, actually, it's the citizens that do the voting. What are they voting for? Are they voting for issues, or are they voting for personalities?
Oh, they certainly vote for both. The camp on the Lapid camp, if I may say so, with a broad spectrum of people who are behind him, want all about the same thing, sort of elevations of social economic conditions for the people. They want stability, economic stability. They want to stop Benjamin Netanyahu at all costs. That is really the mantra. There is more that unify them against Bibi Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, than perhaps more than unite them. There is a lot of personality politics in the play, I would say. I don't hear much of substantive politics, with the exceptions perhaps of the extreme right, which is ideology of the extreme right, or the left with the Labour and Meretz parties, which are very much interested in making sure that human rights has a voice in those elections.
All right, perhaps as a final question, does it matter who wins for the Palestinians and the region in general?
For the Palestinians, certainly, even though most Palestinians do not, most Palestinian or Arab Israeli who have the right to vote in Israel do not believe that coalitions with Benjamin Netanyahu will favor them. On the contrary, they're very reluctant in supporting the Lapid government, and there is a concern about the turnout, the Arab turnout during the elections. But it may well be that that the religious Zionist party it will bring more Arab voters to the elections, because we are talking about really an extreme right that wants the sort of, not just to stop talking about a statehood, a Palestinian state, but really wish to diminish the Palestinian population, the Arab population. So we have a very right-wing possibility coming up with Benjamin Netanyahu's forming coalitions, and they certainly think that they have a Hobson choice, but certainly that the lesser evil, perhaps in some circles, would be a Lapid-Bennett government.
All right, very complex, these equations. We'll have to wait and see what the citizens do decide. But thank you so much indeed for trying to unpack some of that for us. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, there you have it. Very complex. This is the 5th election in 4 years that Israelis have had to go to the polls over. And it's very tight at the moment. It looks as if Netanyahu's backed grouping and the opposition, or the current government, 50-50 at the moment. And if it stays like that, well, the interim government stays in power. So the pressure is on Netanyahu. He has to get over the line. And that means convincing other people to join his cause.